Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Eileen Fitzpatrick, and I am going to present Feng Shui, an energetic global constant. I have been practicing Feng Shui since the mid-90s, and originally I went to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, and I am a graduate and a full-on practitioner. And while at the school, we needed to write a thesis because it is a specialized college. And so we had to do all that type of work. We needed to do the thesis on something that related very specifically to energy work. And I was a secretary, so I had no background to draw this into, whereas other people may have been in the medical field or already doing some type of energy work. So I looked around, and I was from San Francisco, California. That's where I was born and raised. And I was very involved with the Asian community. While I lived there, I went to Chinese school for 4 years when I was a kid. And I learned to speak, read, and write Chinese. I have mostly lost that because I didn't use it as I was growing up. But I was still involved with the Asian community, and I got a very good feel for a lot of the things that they did. I didn't understand them, and I didn't ask a lot of questions about it, but I knew that their homes were very different than my home. So going back to the school, when I was writing the paper, I thought, oh, Feng Shui, I've always wanted to study this and find out more about it. So I went to workshops, I read books, I talked to people, I did all kinds of things, and I started incorporating Feng Shui with the healing sessions. So someone might come, and they would be on the table, and we'd do the work, and they'd be fully loaded. I mean, their energy would be balanced, they'd be feeling great, everything would be good. They'd come back the next week completely depleted. Like they held on to nothing. So we do the work again, and then as I got into Feng Shui, I started asking them, what's going on in your life with this, and how's this in your bedroom, and how do you feel when you go here or do that? And as they answered the questions, I started recommending different things that they do to support their energy. And lo and behold, they started to hold on to the healing work that we were doing together. And so I realized that there's a healing component. Later on, I put it together that everything, of course, is energy. So Feng Shui is just a different version of doing energy healing work. So once I graduated from the Barbara Brennan School, I then went to school for a year at the MIID, which is on Long Island, and they had a Feng Shui Studies course. And I graduated from that and was certified as a Feng Shui consultant. I then went to China, and I studied there with a list of masters and incorporated very different types of Feng Shui. So to get a little bit into my concept of it, is that I have found Feng Shui to be global. It is not Chinese. The Irish have a way of setting up their homes. The Irish have a way of working with the land. The Irish have a way of resonating their energy. The Mexicans have a way of setting up their homes. They have a way of resonating their energy. The Africans do. I mean, everybody has their own version. And as I was discussing this with people, and as I was traveling, because I've been to the Middle East, I've been to Europe and Asia, and as I've been around, one of the things that I have been very fortunate to do is to visit people's homes. So I wasn't just a tourist on all of my trips. And when I would go into people's homes, I would feel the energy and see what was the same and what was different. And I would look at their things, and I would ask them about their lives, and I would watch the traffic flow in the cities, and I would look at how the buildings and the structure of the community was set up. And all of that is Feng Shui to me, and it all, of course, comes back to the individual person. But one of the things that I loved most was the Far Mosque that Solomon made to worship in, called the Far Mosque, is not built of earth and water and stone, but of intention and wisdom and mystical conversation and compassionate action. And what I love so much about that is I realized when I was much younger, still living in California, one day I walked into my home and it just hit me, this is my mother's house. I had virtually the same type of dining room set that she had. I was using the same sort of colors. When people came, I entertained the same way. I suddenly realized, where am I in my life? I was trying to emulate my mother on almost every level. And that had really suffocated my energy, and I had not come forth at all. So I needed to make some major changes. And this piece of the poem where it's intention and passionate action, I just said, wow, I want my home to be comfortable for everyone. I want when people to come in, I want them to feel at ease and comfortable right from the start. And again, that leads back to the concept of feng shui, that it's about how you feel in your surroundings and how it's all supporting you, and how everywhere in the world, everyone does their version of it. So feng shui guides the energy of an individual through supportive life choices and the fundamentals of surrounding oneself with enhancements of placement and space alignment. What that is saying is that it's not one thing. It again comes back to it's everything. Then if you go to someplace like India, it's Vastu, Wabi Sabi in Japan. There's an Islamic version, there's the Mayans. They all have written different things and set up different procedures and processes about how they set up their communities and their homes and how they live there. And again, it's all about the energy so that their community is balanced and everybody can move through and they can flow. In China, they also added the astrology piece. And China has a different version than the Western. China uses the lunar calendar as compared to the sun calendar on the Western side. So there is a piece of feng shui where what you will use is your birth date and maybe the place that you were born, depending on how deep you want to get into the practice. And that, again, is another energy piece. How did the planets, how did the universe line up when you were conceived and brought into this world? It is going to have an effect on the dates of when you do certain things. So there will be days that are very auspicious, and those are the days that you want to sign contracts. And there are other days where you just want to chill and step back. And the other days that are very neutral, and whatever you do is just sort of okay. So energy comes, again, in every form and fashion, and feng shui is about supporting you and enhancing your life. So if you're going to sign a contract, that might enhance your life, and that might be very detrimental because it could turn sour in a minute. So you want to use everything at your, that's based for you on how to create your life. The same goes with your relationships. Now again, this is based on the Chinese version. There are lots of versions of this. But whatever your birth date is, there's a particular animal, there's a particular element that is involved. And there are certain elements that go together, there are certain animals that go together. So with astrology, how do you pair up? What is going to be the best match for you? And through Chinese astrology, you can find that out. You can also do it with Western astrology. So, and again, it's about the energy of the other person based on when they were born and where they were born, and the energy of you based on where you were born and when you were born. So this energy thing, again, it's everywhere and it's everything. Another component is the I Ching. This is a huge topic. But to bring it down to just sort of a base level, the I Ching is 64 symbols. And there are three pieces. They're either a broken line or a solid line. So you can see on the first one, there's a solid line, a broken line, and a solid line. This is the fire element, and it's about recognition. And it has hundreds of other connotations. But one of the things that it is that there are 64 characters to the DNA helix. And there are 64 characters to the I Ching. And these characters relate to each other. So obviously DNA came first, but the I Ching, how did the I Ching come about and how does it relate? Nobody really knows because it's from thousands of years ago. But it's very, very specific. And when computers came to be, although we didn't really know about computers, I think until probably the late 60s or into the 70s, computers were around much longer before that, but they were used on the larger scale, like for airlines and for the government. And it was originally started with 64 bits. And those 64 bits, again, relate to the I Ching. So this is not just about fortune telling. This is not just about, my one symbol. This is the symbol that relates to me based on my birth date and my birthplace. So this is the most powerful one for me. But the other 63 are still involved in my life in some form and fashion. So this is something that can be used to figure out, again, what kind of energy is going on with you. What would be the best course of action. There are books that you can read, there are people that you can talk to. And it's just more information for you to help you make your decisions. Energy, nobody knows where the real source is. Nobody knows if it's a single God, if it's a group, if it's just a thing. There is no knowing, but we do know that there is energy. I mean, there's an absolute, there's just no question, there's no doubt. So say that, it comes from out there somewhere. We're just going to call it the universe because that is virtually the largest thing that we know. And it cascades down. Of course, there are galaxies and black holes and everything in between, but bringing it a little bit closer to home. We have the universe, which goes, which the energy comes down into the planet, which comes into the country and the community. It keeps cascading down until eventually it gets to us. It's all the same energy. We decide how we are going to manifest the energy. We decide what our bodies are going to look like, what our lives are going to be, how our day is. And again, it's all energy, it's all the same energy, but we personally are making the choice of what we are going to do with that energy. But it all comes down to the same thing, and it all goes out to the same thing. Energy just keeps coming and going, morphing and changing, and we decide within our own personal lives how we're going to use that energy. So some of this may look familiar to some people. My earrings here, my little gem earrings. Honestly, I don't know where I got this from because I've had it for ages. But there are energy vortices in the world. There are very specific places where the energy is much more powerful than it is somewhere else. And that is because how it resonates with us. That energy is connected to everything. So this particular one is a very simplified version. But you can see that there's one energy place that connects to another and another. Some connect to several, some only connect to one or two. But the energy is moving, it's flowing, it's not stagnant, it doesn't just stay there. Now sometimes it gets buried, and that would be because we don't bring the life force to it to keep it moving. So it may get a little bit stagnant, it may become a desert, it may become an overgrown jungle where everything is covered up because there was a community there before and now they're gone, so there's no life there anymore that keeps moving. So it ebbs and flows, and there are places that are going to be very, very powerful, like New York City or like Hong Kong, and then there are other places that are in the middle of the desert where the people the Bedouins that are there, know of that place, and they know of the energy, but if we looked at it, we would never see it because it's all covered with sand now, because the life left. Yeah. All the energy went away. The vortex is still there, the energy is still there, it's just not moving anymore. Now if we go tap into it, we can kind of get it going and we can do things with it. But we're off doing our own things now in all these major cities and all of that. But the energy is everywhere. It actually looks more like this. So I don't know how clear that is for you, but these lines they're like string art, a ball of yarn, they just go everywhere. So it's not that my energy is only connecting to you three because you're here. It's connecting to everybody, and it's connecting to everyone in the building, and it's connecting to everyone in the community, because my energy is going out 360. It's not a singular thing. Now, we have a singular connection in this room because I'm up here speaking, so you're focused on me, so there's one direct line of energy, and it is larger and stronger than maybe the connection that you have with your best friend or your family, because they're not here in the moment. Right. You haven't lost that connection. That connection's still in there somewhere. But the one that you're focusing on is the one that you're conscious of right now, and that's where all the energy is coming and going and giving and taking. So you three on the couch here are all connected to each other because you're all in line, you're all 1, 2, 3, and then you're focused on me. Everyone else, they all have their own connection, you're all going back and forth with all of them as well. So the energy just keeps going. It goes through, your energy is now on the couch, it's in the room, it's in the world, it's everywhere. So it's up to you and how you focus it as to how you're going to use it. This is called a Lopan. It is a Chinese compass, again, based on Feng Shui. And there are all these individual rings, and they each mean something different. One has to do with the weather and nature. One has to do with your body, whether it be your eyes or your feet. Another one has to do with very specific locations in the home. They're all very different, and they all sort of move around and shift around, and they're all used in a very different way, and it's all sort of mathematical and, you know, sort of a big deal. All these little things spinning to figure out what's the best location and the best idea for you. A little bit of history about specifically feng shui is that there was a tribe called the Bon people, B-O-N, and they were nomadic. They started out in the Himalayan area, and they, for thousands of years, traveled through Asia. They were very connected to the earth. So when they would set up their camps, which they might set up for a month or they might set up for years, they used the topography and they used nature to figure out how to set up their camps for the absolute optimum for them. And they worked in unison with everything around them. They were not destructive in any way. As they traveled from place to place, of course, the energy changed, the land changed, the hills changed, the plants changed. But because of their companionship with the land and with nature, they were able to move to another area and set up camp and make everything work again. Eventually, they moved into India. And while they were there, they incorporated some of the Indian practices of Buddhism. It was not a religion. Feng Shui is not a religion. They didn't take that on, but they did take on maybe the meditation and some of the calming aspects, you know, some of the rituals that the Buddhists had, and they started doing their Feng Shui a little, well, it wasn't Feng Shui, I don't know what it was called at the time, but their practice. They took their practice and they started incorporating other things that, again, enhanced their lives and their living situation. After X number of years or centuries, whatever it was, they then moved on, and they eventually ended up in China. By this time, China had had Confucianism, they've had emperors, and superstition was very strong in China. The Bon people came in, they settled there for a while, they shared what they knew about the land, about living with nature, about placement, and the Chinese incorporated that into their religions, their Confucianism, they incorporated it into their superstitions. And eventually someone actually sat down and wrote down the practice of Feng Shui and formalized it. Whereas before it was just whatever you were doing was right. It was just right for you and that was it. But now it gets into China and it becomes a very formal type of practice. And people start talking about it. You know, I did this and this happened and it was great. So then all of a sudden everybody that they know is doing that. And then everybody that they know is doing that. And it's moving out. And they're all doing mirrors and they're all doing this. And they're all doing astrology and they're all doing the I Ching. And it's all about, you know, how can I make money and how can I make my life better and how can I do this, that, and the other thing. Some of the superstition that came in is that if a family member died, they would leave the middle world and go elsewhere. And they could send back prosperity. Well, if my relative's going to send me back prosperity, I have to take care of them, which means I have to find the right place to bury them. It's got to be an auspicious place where they feel good for eternity, where there's lots of energy, you know, everything's great, and I can bring them gifts of tobacco or fruits or whatever it is that they had at the time. And we could do our ceremonies and it would be great. So they started working with the priests and saying, you know, what's the best place? Because each individual person didn't know exactly where to go, so there were certain people that started becoming what we now call Feng Shui masters. So they were leading the crowd on how to do everything. Because it became a formal practice, it became a huge thing in China. And the emperors knew that if Feng Shui was done properly, they could be all powerful. So I don't actually have the names because I've read several names with several dynasties that supposedly all did the same thing, but the story comes down to exactly the same point, which was that one of the emperors decided that this was too powerful for the common man. So they got a project together, they called all the Feng Shui masters in the land to come. Now the true Feng Shui masters, the ones who really knew what this was all about and how to use all of the energies of astrology and the energy of the land and the weather and everything, and they knew what was going on, they knew not to go. But all the others, who really weren't as great as they said they were, showed up and they were slaughtered. So the guys that didn't, and it was all men at the time, the guys who didn't went underground. What happened from that is that feng shui became a verbal practice. Nothing was written down. Any book that had been written was gone now. The emperors took it, got rid of it, that was it. They owned it. The only feng shui masters that were known were the ones that worked in the palace specifically for the emperor. And it was to build the cities, to build the Forbidden City, to build the palaces. Those were the only masters that anyone knew of, and they never went outside of the emperor's realm. These others were still sharing it with friends and family and whomever, getting paid under the table, so to speak. And they would, again, teach their sons to become feng shui masters. So it was strictly verbal. So, as I'm sure you know, China's a huge place. The topography is different. They have like 6 or 7 or 8 different types of land masses there. There's the one with the forest, and then there's the desert, and there's the north and the south and all that. So each master developed truly their own version of feng shui. So there isn't just one. So there's the form school, there's the compass school, there's the BTB school, there's something called the Empress version. And I met a woman there and I said, what type of feng shui you practice? She says Empress, which I'd never heard of. And there are all kinds of versions. The bottom line is they're all the same because they're all about enhancing your life and giving you a way to find the energy and get it to flow properly. Feng means wind and shui means water. And wind flows and water flows. And that's where the name came from, because it's to connote flow. So as things flow, you want your energy to flow. You don't want your energy to get stagnant. So feng shui became the name of what they were doing because it connotes the flow of energy. Wind is definitely a part of it because it's an element and it's nature and it is flowing, and water, of course, is also a very powerful force in our lives. But there's also fire, there's also the land, there are many other things. So that is just the title of it, again, because we want everything to flow. So this compass was developed over the years by the masters in the palaces and using the directions. So you can see right in the middle, there's an actual compass here. And where you were standing, you would use the compass and you would find out what is the most optimum direction for whomever the person is, the emperor or the emperor's queen or whoever it was. Find out the appropriate direction. This is how we put the bed. This is where we put the door to the room. These are the colors that we should be using. Again, it's based a lot on the birth date and the birthplace of the person. Well, I guess in China, at that time, they probably didn't use a birthplace, but the birth date would be used to figure out, astrologically, what is the best direction for this person. As time went on, it started shifting and becoming a little bit easier to use because people started finding commonalities. Now, again, this is just a larger version of the Lo Pan. As you'll see, there are 8 I Ching marks that go around the compass in the middle. So a couple thousand years ago, someone came up with the concept of, well, wait a minute, this is the I Ching, and this is how powerful it is, and this is what it means, and this is what the direction is. Why are we making it so difficult in using this Lo Pan, which is still a great instrument. I'm not putting down the Lo Pan in any way, shape, or form. If you can use it, go for it. But there's no reason for it to be that difficult and that detailed. You can use the I Ching symbols. You can use the north, south, east, and west. You can use the different areas that they all relate to see what's going on in your life. So you could take this as your personal compass and you can map it out on your space and you could see what's going on in an area. You have to know how to lay it down on your space. So if you're having a problem with your leg or with your foot, this might tell you what area to look in to see, is there a disruption there? For instance, is there an electrical outlet that burnt out and no longer works? So now the energy's not working in that area, the energy's not working in your leg. Is there a connection? Absolutely, there's a connection. Now, there are going to be a lot of people who hear me speak that are going to contradict everything I say. They're not going to agree with me. It's all opinion. This is what I've learned from my studies over 15 years and from my travels. And that's what I'm presenting to you, is what I have learned. You can take this and morph it and make it into your own. You can do your own studies, and I highly recommend that you talk to more than one person and you find out more than one opinion of these things. If you hire a consultant, be sure that whatever they tell you to do resonates with you. If they're telling you to move stuff around or to do certain things in your life, and that doesn't feel right to you, do not do it. Don't do it. Sit with it and see what your version of that is. So if you don't have the money to go get an electrician to put in a whole new system over this part of the house, find someone who can cut that off and finish it and bring it to completion. Don't just leave it hanging there in complete disarray, just taking energy in and not doing anything with it. Bring it to completion. Or move it on to what's next, which would be fix it and get a whole new set of wires and electrical outlet and all that. There are options, and you have to do the option that's right for you. There are going to be consultants that say, hang a crystal. That's too hippie for you. It's not the 60s anymore. I don't want to hang a crystal. Don't hang a crystal. If it's not right for you. Crystals are very powerful, and they do work. They absorb energy, and they send it back out again. So it may be a great cure. But if it doesn't resonate for you, don't use it. So this is one of the tools. This is a tool, and then this is a version of one of the other tools called the Bagua, and it's done in one of the feng shui practices. And it tells you what direction things are in, and then you can go look in that area, see what's too much, see what's not enough, and shift things around. Okay. In the middle of the Bagua is something called the Tai Chi, and this is also another thing that's huge in Asia. Tai Chi is the balance of the two sides of masculine and feminine. And as you can see, I've put a partial list, because of course the list would be endless, of basic opposites, of what these mean. You want a balance in your life. That's what this is all about. It's getting the balance. The Tai Chi shows you that there's all dark with one dot of light. It is never absolute. There's never anything that's 100% as is, because there's always other influences in your life coming in. So you may have all the money that you think you need and everything's great, but you still have someone coming asking for your money, so your money's still going out. As much as coming in, it's still going out. Your health may be really great, but then we have really bad weather, and we have viruses out there, and we're not taking care of ourselves and eating right. My health is great, everything's good, but then you don't take the right supplements, and then you end up with the cold, or whatever. There's always something coming in. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to take it on and do something with it. It just means that it's there. You're surrounded by people with the flu and you don't get it. Yay! But it's still part of your life because your friend has it and it's there. So whether it's the light or the dark, there's always something of the opposite present. Now, one thing I like to explain is the masculine and feminine, because there are a lot of people that just can't seem to get beyond that means man and woman. It does not. There are a lot of men who have a very effeminate side. And there are a lot of women who have a very masculine side. But that doesn't mean that they are the opposite of what they are. They are women, they are men, period. Everyone has a little bit of each in them. Some have a lot. It's all a percentage thing. It just depends on you and what your life is like. So just understand that even if you want something very modern and very stark and very solid in your life, bring in a little bit of the feminine, which means maybe have softer pillows, or maybe have a lighter color rather than just a black. Bring something in that balances it. And the balance may be one single thing in your life, and it may be 50%. Again, this goes back to resonating what works for you. How does it feel for you? What do you like about it? Are you comfortable? And keep tweaking until it works. It also doesn't mean that if you want to shift something, in your space or in your life, that you have to do everything at once. This kind of goes back to the gym training. What's the next step? So you don't go in and just paint the whole house. Pick a room, pick a wall. Change the fabric on one chair. Change one thing. You don't have to do it all. And the truth is, you can't. If you decide to go in and do everything, it will send your life into absolute chaos, which defeats the purpose. because you're already in chaos and you're trying to bring balance in, and now you're recreating chaos on the other side, and then it doesn't stop, and now where are you? So do what feels right for you. Do as much as you can in the moment where you feel good. Step back, reassess. One of the things I found when I do consultations is I give a huge list to someone to do all these different things. They are all based on what is there and what is going on in this one moment. So if you change 3 things, the rest of the list may be wrong. So you change a few things, and then you look around and say, do I really need to do number 4, number 5? No. Number 6? I still want to do number 6. Maybe you want to do number 12, and then you're finished. That's it. Because once you change one thing, everything else is different. So assess, follow your heart, follow your energy, and see what works for you. There are some natural things that do disrupt our energy, and there's one major thing called geopathic stress. And this particular version here shows, because it happens in different ways, but this particular one is that there's a water source underground. There's a stream. Now, a stream underground is not the kind of thing that we see, you know, a babbling brook in the park kind of thing. These are massive. And the water is rushing, and it's gushing, and it's going through, and it's pounding against the wall, and it's doing all this thing. And then it comes to a turn, and it slams against the wall, slams against the wall, and that energy is shooting straight up. Or it's actually going out. It's going in all directions. But your home, or where you live, is right above it. So you're getting this kind of energy constantly in that one place. So you need to do something to move the energy, because it will kill all the plants. It will disrupt your sleep. It will cause health issues. If you have a child, an infant that you put in the crib, and every single time you go in, that baby is squished up all the way over to the other side, there's a disruption there. There is something uncomfortable. And that infant knows that I don't like this energy, I'm getting out of it. And they move over to the side. If you have a dog bed, and the dog or the cat litter box or something, and they refuse to go in the litter box, the dog won't sleep in that bed, what could be there? It could be a version, either major or minor, of geopathic stress. And it's disrupting them, and they don't want to be in that energy, so they don't go there. So there are all kinds of cures. Well, I don't know a lot of them, but there are some cures on how to handle geopathic stress. But understand that because a person doesn't like to sit, you got this beautiful chair in your living room, and no one ever sits there. That corner of the house is never used. You put your finances for your business in this area, and everything dropped down. What the hell happened? It could be the energy in the space is so disruptive that nobody can work properly. No one's comfortable sitting there. They don't want to be there. Now you're not aware of it. It's not like, you know, unless you are looking for it, or unless you know how to read energy, then you're not going to know when you're there what's going on. I was hired in Ireland. I was working with developers, and I was hired to do some land work. And I worked quite a bit on the land itself, as well as in structures. I loved working on the land. It was amazing. So this one developer had bought these lots, and they wanted to start the process, and they had to get their plans approved, and la-di-da, all this stuff. But every time they did something, something else happened. And then they'd fall backwards, and then they have to start again. And there's this and there's that. So they hired me to come in and to work the land. Now, it was huge. So it wasn't the kind of place that I could go and walk, like in someone's singular lot or backyard, and walk around. So I took a map, and I worked on it, and I did some dowsing. I became certified in divining and dowsing while I was in Ireland. And I did some divining and dowsing using a map of the space. And I found this one location where the energy was just horrible. So I did a meditation, I did some work on it, and cutting to the end of the story, there was a disruption in the land in that one place. And I told the people that. So the wife was all kind of gung-ho about the feng shui, and the husband, he was very nice to me. He was absolutely nice to me. But he kind of sat back and just sort of nodded. You know? He wasn't really going to get involved in this. But when I pointed to one location on the map, he said, "Come on, let's go." So we all hopped in, whatever you call it, the SUV, the Jeep, whatever. And we went, and there's this huge hedge, and as we came around the hedge, we all just sort of gasped. The entire field had been cut back, which they do for silage. They cut all the hay and the grass back, except for this one rectangle. You couldn't miss it. And it was the exact spot that I had marked on the map.
Wow.
So we did some energy cures there, and there's a whole story behind what was going on there, which isn't relevant in the moment. But the point is that that one spot, and it wasn't like directly in the middle, it was kind of off to the side there, but that one spot had such a strong disruption that it canceled out everything else that they were trying to do with the land. And until we cleared that, they couldn't do anything. We cleared that, and within 3 weeks they had their plans approved, they had whatever was next they were going on, and they ended up developing the land, and everything sort of worked out until 2008 when there was the crash. But at the time, they couldn't even get started. I mean, they literally just had the land sitting there for almost a year and could do nothing until this one spot. It was like, I don't know, 4 by 6 or something. I don't even know it was that big. Until that one spot. But the idea that whoever these people are, these farmers or guys that come in and cut the silage down, I mean, you could almost see that the blades would come up, were lifted, drove, put down, and kept on going. It made no sense. And I said, well, was there a structure here before? Were there pipes? Is there plumbing? There was nothing, no. So there was nothing for them to disrupt. But for some reason, these people knew, don't cut the grass there. And they went around it. And it was bizarre. So geopathic stress can be a natural occurring thing that comes from under the ground. And it can also be something that we create. So we have all our roads set up here, and we put our houses in these certain places, or we have our house there, and then the county comes in and changes the road.
Yeah.
So what happens here? All the energy from all the traffic that's coming is going directly at your house. Same here. Now it's all passing by. You're not getting any energy at all. It's just all just whizzing by, everything's happening. So you need to do some cures. And you need to do some certain things around your home. So this is, again, not about just inside the house. This is about the land and what's going on outside as well. So what's going on in their garden? Do they have trees? Do they have shrubs? Do they have anything? I mean, some people just have rocks out front. They have no life out there at all. So what's going to bring the energy to your home? How are you going to direct it? What are you going to do? And how are you going to work with your community to make sure that your home is the best? You want to do something that relates back to feng shui. Because again, feng shui is everything. So the person who does it, they already have a sense, they already know what they want, they already know how high to put the wall or where to put the tree so that it gets the energy flowing in the appropriate direction. They didn't hire a feng shui master, they knew. Just, they sensed it. But what they were doing is considered a feng shui enhancement or a feng shui cure, you know, based on all of the practices from the old times. So now you bring it into a modern time and you need to do all kinds of different things. Because you can't decide that you don't want your door to face north. If you're on this side of the street, north is there, you're great, the wind's going to come from the back. If you're on this side of the street, the north wind is just going to come right out and hit your door. And you can't say, no, I'm going to put my door somewhere else. The community, the planning for the county has already decided this is how the houses go. You're in a city, the doors go this way, that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
So you'll find a lot of people who never use their front door. They only use the side door. And they say, oh, it's just easier. Is it? Or is it more comfortable? It's more comfortable because the energy feels better over there. It's just as easy for them to get out of the car and go in the front door, but no, they walk down the side of the house and come to the side. Or they go through the garage, or whatever. Because they're not comfortable with the front door, because there's some energy source there that doesn't resonate well with them. It does not mean, although it can be, it does not mean that it is negative or detrimental. It can become that. It means that it's uncomfortable for you. If it's negative or if it's detrimental, you'll figure that out quickly. But if it's just uncomfortable, it does mean that you're depleting or you're not receiving the amount of energy that you could and maybe should in your space and for your own personal well-being. So you want everything in balance. You want the inside of the house, the outside of the house. You want the park across the street where the kids play. You know, you want the rivers clean. You want it all. It's not really that singular because, again, we're all part of this whole universal complex where the energy keeps going in and out. You're getting all of their energy. You're giving them all theirs. How are you going to resonate? How are you going to balance? So you want to use something that's in a feng shui theme, again, connoting flow, to bring your life into balance and to keep moving forward. You can do this in tons of different ways. And as I said about the house and where you put the door, placement is one of them. I want to be very clear that feng shui is not about where you put your couch, which is what you will read in a lot of newspaper and magazine articles. It in no way is interior decorating. Interior decorating is part of feng shui because how you place it, you have to be comfortable. So that's interior decorating or designing or whatever you want to call it. You know, it has to feel good to you and all of that. So there's a component, but it is not feng shui at all. So you have to kind of put that all together. But the different things that you can use, as I was saying earlier about the I Ching and about astrology, you have an element that resonates for you more than the others. You need all the elements. There isn't one that you shouldn't have, but there is one. And you can create the elements in your life through symbolism. You can use it by having the actual element. You can use it, you can do it by words or in pictures. There are all kinds of things that you can do. So this is just a very, very simplistic example. That water would be swirly, wood would be rectangular. The earth would not work, it's not supposed to be square. Fire is that, and then metal's this. There's the geometrics, and then there's all kinds of crazy symbols that you can use. They have to resonate with you. If you want certain things in your life, for your furniture, for the tables that you use, depending on what you're doing with that table, if it's for business, you may want the table to be a certain size and shape because that will draw in a certain energy from the person that you're doing business with. So if you're in a sales negotiation, you want to be in the power position. So you may want to use particular type, pick a particular shaped table to put you in the power position from the other person. You may want it to be a full community, like when you're having meetings with your staff. So you want to be sure that the energy flows in a certain way, so you'll have a different type of table. These types of things, again, these are much more on the spiritual side and on the esoteric side. You know, they've been used through the ages. You know, these are more fun things like Mona Lisa. Now, it's not specific to Mona Lisa, but do you want a picture that is very classic, you know, on your wall, a painting or something? Or do you want something that's a little more, you know, on the crazy side and more modern? You know, what's going to work for you that when you look at it, your energy is enhanced? One of the challenges is working with couples because he likes it this way, and, you know, if it's a regular, you know, a heterosexual married couple, and she likes it the other way. The reason I'm getting to that is I worked with a couple. They did not live together before they were married, so when they moved in together into this new apartment and they were setting it up, the husband had a poster of a record album, and it was a woman's face. It was split, and one side she was gorgeous, you know, makeup, everything's all done, and the other side she's sort of deteriorating. It was gory. Let me just say it was gory. So one side gorgeous, one side gory. That was like his favorite thing in the entire apartment. But every time she came out of the bathroom, this is what she had to look at. And she hated it. But she didn't want to tell him to get rid of it, and she didn't want it, and she didn't know what to do, and there was this whole thing going back and forth, so she was in absolute turmoil about what to do with this. Because first thing in the morning, this is what she had to look at. So I said to her, well, does he have to have it there, or is it just that he likes it? And she just sort of looked at me. It never dawned on her to have the discussion, can we move it a foot or two down the hall so that when you're not coming out of any room and looking at it, but it's still in a place where he will see it and still enjoy it. But for some reason, for her it was an absolute. It was either there or it wasn't. And again, going back to feng shui and having a flow, it doesn't have to be an absolute. You change it. You don't have to destroy it or get rid of it. You don't have to replace it. Just shift it and move it. So this particular picture he loved. He moved it down to another area in the hall where he could still see it whenever he wanted or passed by or whatever it was, so he could still enjoy it. And now she wasn't confronted with it first thing in the morning, every morning. And everybody was happy. Going back to the thing about the couch, I worked with a couple that they never used their living room. And they didn't have a big place, but they just never went into the living room. And it was nice. It was nicely set up, and there was nothing. I walked in, there was nothing kind of. But I stood there, and something drew my attention to the couch. And I said, obviously it's the largest piece of furniture in the room, but there was still just something. And so I said, tell me about the couch. And I can't even imitate the voice, but he said, oh, my mother-in-law gave it to us. And I said, so I guess there's sort of an issue with mother-in-law, and he just, I don't remember what he said, but it was not good. He shook his head. And the wife is like, yeah, it's my mother. We had to take it. She offered it to us. I had to take it. Neither of them liked the couch. So every time they even looked in the room, or not even walked in, but looked in the room, what they saw was the mother-in-law. That was the energy that was there. It wasn't their energy. So I said, you have a couple of choices. You could do a clearing and release her from the couch, because you're the ones that have attached there. She gave it to you. She's finished with it. So you can either release her from the couch or replace the couch. Why are you keeping it? She's like, well, my mother gave it to me. I said, yeah, so now it's yours. Once it's yours, it's yours. If you're not getting rid of it because your mother gave it to you, then you are keeping her attached to it. So you make a choice. How do you want this to work? Is this your home? Is this your living room? They did replace it. They weren't really into the whole sage thing and doing clearings and all of that. That wasn't quite their thing. But they did get rid of the couch, and the mother-in-law was fine with it. She didn't need it anymore, and she was getting rid of it. So it turns out she just knew that they needed a couch and said, why don't you take my couch? They took it as a has to. I have to take the couch. And she took it as I have to get rid of it anyway. You need one. Why don't you just take it? So they had built this whole thing around this couch, so the energy in the room was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so they got rid of the couch, everybody was happy, the mother-in-law didn't care, and everything was fine. So, what are you doing with your stuff? What is the symbolism of the items in your life? What's the jewelry that you wear? Are you wearing rings or clothing or something that someone gave you to make them feel good, and it makes you feel lousy? If it's a neutral or it makes you feel good, and you're doing it to make them feel good, that's not a big deal. But if you put it on, you go, God, I really hate this shirt. But, I know so-and-so's going to be there and make her feel good. Well, then your energy is already depleted and you're not feeling good. And where's the flow? And how is that life enhancing? How's that going to feel? It's another version of feng shui. There's a symbol. That shirt or that jewelry or whatever becomes symbolic. And now it's working with your energy. Again, bring it back to you. How does it make you feel? Do what's right for you. Don't dismiss the other person, but, find a way around it. But the thing is that don't do something just to make someone else feel better by making yourself feel lousy. You're completely out of balance and out of whack then. It's got to be win-win all the time. So you can use these symbols, ancient Egyptian symbols, the Ankh, which is everlasting life. You can, use the Star of David. You can use whatever symbol works for you. Wear it, use it around your place, draw it in your books, do whatever you want to do with it. But if you look at something and it makes you feel good and it elevates you in some way, use it. I saw in a catalog, it's about a foot long, it's a wishbone, and it's gold plated. So for a lot of people, they play with the wishbone, particularly around the holidays, because there are a lot of turkeys, and the wishbones are a good size, although you can do it with chicken. And if you don't know, each person pulls a side, you make a wish, and whoever gets the larger broken side is the one who gets the wish. So it's fun. So that is elevating. That's going to bring your energy up. So when you look at it, you know, if that's the paperweight that you have on your desk is a gold wishbone, it's something fun, which means it's going to elevate. It doesn't have to be this really serious thing. You know, it doesn't have to be a quote from the Bible or the Quran or Buddha or something. You know, it doesn't have to be the lotus. It can be a wishbone. You know, just something that's going to work with you. I said something a little bit about the elements and how you could use water and all of that. So some of you may have heard of Dr. Emoto in Japan. He wrote a book and he did all kinds of studies. And if you don't know about it, I'll just briefly go into it. There is a particular stream, I'm sure there are lots of them, but there's a particular stream that he went to where the water is pristine, just absolutely pristine. And he did some studies, and it's very long, but the bottom line is he took the water, he froze it into singular crystals, and he studied them. And the water that they had either played certain types of music with, actually written a word and taped it to the bottle, had someone verbally speak the words towards the bottle. If they were positive, like good, thank you, angel, this is what it looked like. It came out in this beautiful crystalline type formation that was absolutely gorgeous. It was perfection. It was terrific. When they did stuff like heavy metal music, I hate you, go to hell, anything like that, any words or challenges in any way, it came out ugly, disformed, pustule looking. It just didn't resonate. So water is an element that's in our lives. Again, we want it to be pure, just like everything else. We want to use our filters and all that. But water connotes flow, so you can use water in your life. You can put it in certain places and use it in certain ways to enhance your energy. It also, is symbolic for, the depth. So if you want water that's in a stationary form, like a goldfish bowl or something, it'll be depth. If you want it moving, you can use a water fountain. There are lots of crazy cures and different things you can use, but it's something for you. So if water is an element that you really, really like, then you're going to want to use it. But the other thing that is not an element that this brings up is sound. What are the sounds that you surround yourself with? What is the kind of music that you're listening to? I live on a commercial street, but I'm back far enough that I don't get pummeled by the traffic. I still hear it, but it's low enough that it's not bothersome. I have been in apartments that were right on a commercial or a highly trafficked street. They open the window, you cannot hear yourself think, it is so loud. And when the window's closed, the vibration is still coming through. So sounds are huge in your life. You can ring bells, you can play certain music, or play an instrument, or play music, do humming, chants, anything that makes a nice sound. Wind chimes are sort of one of those crazy feng shui cures. The thing that I like about wind chimes is that if you have a business, you use a wind chime because it'll attract attention. It can shift the energy in the space that you put it in certain ways, but the purpose for me is that it's an attention getter. And if it's a nice wind chime, it's something that you really like, and you put it outside your window or your door or whatever, when you hear it, it's going to make you feel good. If you don't like wind chimes and you want to use a string of bells, I have bells on my door as more of a protection. I have the bells, so it makes me feel good, so it's only inviting positive into my home and into my space. But I had to use bells that I liked. There's lots of bells out there, they sound very tinny or whatever. These are kind of fun, they're camel bells. And I like them only because they're camel bells. I just thought that was so cool. So I have camel bells. I also have Tibetan pony bells. And I like the sound of those. There's also the Tibetan flat bells that you click together. Some people like the sound of those. And again, going back to the music, there's the Baroque music which is taught in the Global Information Network, that Baroque music will help you study and absorb information at a different level. So clearly sounds have a big effect on us. And again, going back to feng shui and connoting flow, you want to be in balance. So if these sounds aren't working for you and aren't resonating for you, then you want to do something to counter them. Find a way to muffle them, or find a way to change them. Make it work for you rather than against you. If you don't like something, find a way to change it, enhance it in some way. And this shows very clearly what sound will do. Now the words themselves, thank you or go to hell, thank you or hell, let's say, gratitude and hell. So gratitude is a positive because we've decided gratitude is a positive. So it's clearly not the word itself, it's what we've decided it is. So that sound is what we're making it up to be. And so when we're putting it out there and what it means in the world, it's going to create one of these. There were hundreds and hundreds of versions of this. This is not, I just want to be clear, this is not the only one. This is just one version. Okay. So this is the one that they chose for angel devil because it shows the opposite. Yeah. So the words we say are going to either enhance or deter what we're doing. The sounds that we hear, how we speak, how we make noise. It affects us, affects our neighbors, affects everyone. So you figure out what's going on, and be sure that to always bring in the element of sound, because it does have its own vibration and it does have a huge effect on us. And a lot of people don't really bring that into consideration when they're doing things. Air is another thing. Are you in a windy area? Are you in a quiet area? If you have no airflow, create airflow. You want it to move, you want things to move through. You don't want stuff to get stagnant. It's also an element, and it can be created in the physical in plants. Again, you may or may not know that plants take in carbon dioxide, right? And they put out oxygen. Okay, so you've got the air, and that's what the plants are doing. So plants are a good thing to have around when you don't have the right air that you want to have. You can also do it, with symbology and things that flow, and the type of curtains that you